Excuse me. And that's how everything is done, right? We've heard of people joke about big pharma making the decisions for everybody, etc. Well, that's what we're talking about. Now, question for you: how can we watch a movie in class? Because those of you that have been in my class before know that I love movies. If I play it live, that wouldn't work, right? I'd have to play it. We're not going to do it now, but I'd love to show The Death of Stalin just to.
You actually can. Like if you're sharing your screen, if you have some way of playing it on your computer, we see your screen.
I know, but then the quality's not amazing, right?
Oh, true.
What I could do is literally share it in the Google Classroom. You guys press play. Why no, Matthew?
Because then I can't see everyone's reactions to the movie.
You're going to watch people's faces watching the movie, or you're going to watch the movie?
A little bit of both.
Well, okay. We can figure that out. All right. I guess the easiest thing is to play it for you, but we'll see. Constitutional governments. Canada, United States. We talked about this yesterday, how they're very different. And they're literally defined because of the fact that they have a constitution. What is a constitution? In this regard, a constitution is basically a legal document. Canada has a constitution. The Americans have the Bill of Rights, et cetera, et cetera. And basically, it outlines the laws, the fundamental laws, and how America or Canada or whatever country has this constitution likes to deal with, life, basically. I'm going to lose battery here. I better plug this in. And usually well read out. What's on Netflix, Tyler? The Death of Stalin? Well, that's even better because then I can... Yeah, but not everyone has Netflix. Anyway, we'll figure it out. I do have it as a digital copy. Now, levels of government. We talked a lot about this yesterday, where we typically, especially in confederations, or federations, have the federal laws, but then there's the subnational, regional, etc. So let's explore those in a little more detail, right? So, this is a lot of an overview of what you learned about. We can do a rave or a Netflix party. Okay, Dina. Like I said, we learned a lot about this in detail in civics, but it's very important that we learned it today again as an overview to understand how politics works. So we have, for example, Canada. We have the Government of Canada. Website's very straightforward, canada.ca, and that's the federal national level. What kind of responsibilities do they have? Well, national defense, so the military. You'll see a Canadian flag on the military, not a provincial flag. Unemployment insurance, postal service, right? Canada Post, not Ontario Post. Money and banking. We have the Canadian dollar, not the Ontario dollar. Citizenship, you have a passport of Canada. Yes, Matthew?
Hello?
What?
When you said banking, I thought you were talking about individual banks, not like the dollar. So I was going to be like, what about Bank of Montreal? But then you were like...
It's actually a good question. So in Canada, even though we have, the big five banks, Bank of Montreal, CIBC, TD Bank, Royal Bank. Am I missing something? Yeah, 4 or 5 banks. Those are all regulated by the government. So in Canada, you can't just open up Scotiabank. That's the 5th one. Thanks. You can't just open up a bank. Whereas in the United States, the laws are a little different. You can have public-private banks, right? So if you've ever been to the States, you'll notice that you drive down the road and there's all these different, trust this and bank that, First National Bank of Kansas and stuff like that. These are all singular
Hello?
private banks.
Hello.
And there's historically has had big problems with these banks. A few years ago, about 12 years ago, there was a big crash in the United States in the housing market because these banks were not regulated by the federal government, and they were allowing basically anybody who wanted to get one a mortgage. Now, the problem with that is that if you apply for a mortgage,
Hello?
you have to be able to
Hello?
pay for it, right? But these banks were basically
Hello?
saying, okay, I'll give you a
Hello?
mortgage. And people were not able to pay for it. So the whole housing market crashed. Now, in Canada, that would never happen because the government controls the banks so rigorously that to get a mortgage, you have to be vetted. You have to, it's very difficult, right? Citizenship, again, Canadian passport. Even though you have a driver's license, I know yesterday half the people were like, I got my driver's license, yay. Is Ontario, that's different. Indian Affairs, which is not a good name, Indigenous, but history, some things are still called racist things, like marijuana is a racist word, should be called cannabis. Criminal law, also federal, etc. Right? So right now, the current prime minister is Justin Trudeau. And who's the lady on the left?
I don't want to say something stupid. Isn't she an astronaut?
She was an astronaut, amongst many things on her resume, but that's not her current position.
Is it Julie Payette?
She's a
Yeah.
governor general, right?
Yeah, she's a governor general. She was recently in the news this summer. I don't know if you saw. Controversial. Basically, people in her office were releasing information to the media, claiming that she's very difficult to work with. But that's not for us to make the judgment because we're not in her office. I'm just saying that that's what was in the news. Do you remember? And that blew over pretty fast. Called Slow News Day. Then we have subnational. So if in Canada's example, we have Ontario or any province or territory. But again, they don't call them provinces or states everywhere. In Switzerland, we call them cantons. In China, it's province. The name is a name. But what they are the subnational level of government. Typically, a subnational or provincial, in Canada's case, government has responsibilities that include education. So the Minister of Education, our very good friend, Stephen Lecce, as you guys are all our personal hero in education. He's Ontario, right? Health care, welfare, etc., and licensing, municipalities, etc. Now, as the Canadian government has Governor General, the Ontario government has the Lieutenant Governor, which is very similar role. And again, in Canada, in Ontario, Ford is our current premier, and he's been on the news daily almost, especially because of COVID, right? Leading the people. Now, regions. What is the region that St. Rob exists in? Yeah.
York region?
York region. Now, York region's a funny one, isn't it? Because is York region a city, a region, a country? What exactly is York region? Is there a mayor of York region? Is there mayor of, are there like, it's hard to understand what York Region is sometimes, right? Does anybody have an idea? They can kind of summarize.
Isn't it like 5 cities that came together and they're like, hey, we're gonna make like a big city, but there's still individual mayors and stuff?
Yes, and yeah, basically. But what are those 5 cities? Is it 5 cities or no? Okay. Yeah. So there's, the mayor of Georgina, there's Newmarket, etc. And basically, some of the aspects of the government are controlled for all of York Region, and then there's even sub categories for those specific towns or cities, right? And typically, public transit. So there's the York Region, what is it, Viva?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Thanks, whoever that was. And of course, the thing with the regional governments is that they only have whatever power the government has given them. Right? So of the 3, obviously they're the least powerful. And arguably, for everyday life, the province is the most powerful, right? Not the federal government. And we kind of talked about that yesterday. Okay, so there we have the chair, region, and the regional council. Could be one or multiple mayors, in this case of Durham, as an example here, right? So once we go even smaller than the typical, the regional, we have the local or the municipal, the lowest tier. So the town of Georgina or the town of Newmarket, etc. Right? So this is just a map of the example that we have here of Uxbridge, right? They have some serious responsibilities too, like library, garbage, sewage, parks and rec, fire, building codes, etc. So very important stuff. And here's just a kind of example of how Uxbridge works. Town hall.
OPP,
OPP. And what does OPP stand for?
Ontario Provincial Police.
Right. OPP, yeah, you know me. So what's the RCMP?
Royal Canadian Mounted Police.
And what is the American equivalent to the RCMP?
Hello.
The FBI.
That's right.
Hello.
And what's CSIS?
The Canadian CIA.
That's right.
Hello. Hello.
All mixed within Canada and provincial. There you go. All right. So again, I know you guys are all already experts in this because you took grade 10 civics, but I need to refresh your memories. Levels of government, branches of government, executive, legislative, and judicial. The school board is part of which level of government? Yeah, Matthew.
I'm gonna guess regional because we're like the York Catholic District School Board, but I could be wrong.
So we are in the York Catholic District School Board. You're correct. And of course, we answer to the Minister of Education, Stephen Lecce, who is a part of the Ontario government, right? Hence, every day in the last 2 weeks and continuously now, we see changes more and more to what's being done, right? We're seeing more and more people switch to cohort C, especially in the elementary panel this week alone. And many boards are, I don't know if you've seen the news, they're delaying the start. They're delaying the start to online teaching because it's almost like constantly every day people are switching out of in-class school for a number of reasons. Maybe the fear of a second wave or who knows what, right? So this is an example of the Durham School Board. Very well trained in all things education. Is the head, I guess, below Ford. And then we have chairs and trustees, directors, etc., all the way down to teachers and students. You and me, we're the most important. So what are the school board's responsibilities? Well, they have to hire the administrative staff, they maintain the buildings, they transport the students, et cetera, et cetera. Et cetera, et cetera. So the executive branch, that's the one you always see on TV, et cetera, when we talk about federal in this case. So Governor General, Prime Minister, they're the leaders of the government, the top leaders of the government. Right? These are the residences of the Governor General and the Prime Minister. They're both in what city? Ottawa. Yes, Matthew. I see you mumbling your name there, the word name there. Which house is bigger? If you guys have ever been there. You can't really see from the picture, but not just the house, the property. The official residence of the Governor General is huge compared to the official residence of the Prime Minister. Like massive, not just the house, but the property too. Very old buildings. You know, they're not like the White House, where the White House actually has a lot of daily, it's an office building as well. In Canada, the office building is Parliament Hill, on Parliament Hill, right? And of course, they both have country residences, summer residences as well. The Citadel and Harrington Lake. But of course, the office of the Prime Minister is in the side building of the, has anyone ever been to Ottawa? Do you guys go on like a grade 6 trip or something? Yeah. Did you get to go inside? No. That's a shame. It's a cool building. And there's the hero to many, Trump and Pence. The White House, of course, is the official residence. And the VPOTUS lives down the street. The Oval Office, et cetera, et cetera. So in Canada, we have a cabinet. There are ministers selected by the Prime Minister to deal with a department, right? In the US, there are similar similar way of conducting themselves. They have different branches of government, but notice the difference between the faces of the Canadian, the current Canadian cabinet and the current American cabinet.
Hello. Hello.
Very different. All right. So we have legislative assembly, the legislative branch, right? That's where the House of Commons is. And if you guys are in my class in grade 10, you would have done a presentation on the House of Commons and an aspect of it. And then, of course, underneath is the Senate and the House of Commons, et et cetera, et cetera. Now, this is the old picture from before the last election, when the Liberals won a majority. The Liberals did not win a majority, but won
Hello.
a seat. I mean, they won the most in terms of how it works. So the Senate seating plan, there you go, independent senators, Conservative Party, etc. More residences of where the government officials live. United States, etc., etc. So there are very
Hello?
many similarities
Hello?
between the
Oh
United
my God.
States government, but also very, very many differences. In Canada, the highest court is that court right there. It is the Supreme Court in Ottawa, just down the street from the Parliament House on Rideau. And there's a Chief Justice with their funny garbs. They look like Santa Claus. But in Canada, because of our history, all lawyers wear lawyer clothing in court, at least in that level. And the United States also has Supreme Court and justices, et cetera, et cetera. Now, let's go over some of the things that we read today and yesterday. What is a supranational government? That was more of an official word for what type of government? Does anybody remember?
Empires.
Sure. And give me an example of an empire.
The British Empire.
Good. And what does it mean to be a supranational government? How does it work? Okay, you can check your notes. National governments, of course, we have the federal governments of Canada, but then within we have the local, state or province or cantor, etc. governments. What is a government by mode of succession? Uh-huh.
The monarchy.
Yeah, sure. Right. We looked at different types of rule. What were the major rule types that we looked at? Anyone?
I don't know. Right. Like autocratic and democratic.
Yeah, those types of things. Easy. Okay, that's fine. So give me a moment while I post the next thing. Did everyone get a chance to read the document, excuse me, from yesterday?
Yeah.
Good. All right. So what I want you to do now is I'm going to post a series of questions. In fact, a lot of questions. But they're all very simple. And I want you, excuse me, I got a frog in my throat, to answer them as best you can. Now, give me a moment while I, excuse me. This is not for marks, even though I'm putting it under assignments. I just want you to do it so that you do it. And I want you to see how many you know off by heart. So there's no Googling these answers. This is one of those things where we want to see what we already know about Canada. If you don't know the answer, then I want you to Google it, but mark off on it that this question was Googled. Does that make sense? Yes?
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to do no due date. Okay. So do not get overwhelmed that there's like, what, 100 questions here? 63 questions. Again, I know, hey, Matt, whatever your name is, Matthew. The whole point is that this is one of those fun kind of personal things. What do I already know about Canada? Right? See if you can answer them. That's the kind of thing that, you know, is fun to answer. So why don't I give you guys half an hour of asynchronous time for that right now? And then, like I said, what you're going to do is get a document, answer the questions, and but what you know. The ones you don't know, just skip them and then come back to them and then Google them and mark off that I had to Google, you know, in some kind of indication. Yes, Rosario, I see you. Just one sec. That you had to, I didn't know the answer to this. Not so much for me to mark, but for you to, I forgot most of this info. I didn't finish it. What? Okay, anyway, Rosario, you had a question?
I was wondering if you wanted us like to submit the document within the like Dropbox, or if we're just going to be sharing like throughout class.
Yeah, I mean, answer the question and then submit it so I know you did it.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So see you at 1:45. Is that enough time? No, that's not enough time. 2 o'clock. Okay? 2 o'clock. It's due, Miriam. I'd like it to be done by 2. If not, we'll come back to it. Okay? How about that? I deliberately did a no due date on there because I want to see how long it would take. All right? This is not a project or anything. It's just kind of like a home exercise in class right now. Make sense? Okay. See you in a bit. 2 o'clock. I'm around. You can message me. I'm just turning off the video and audio.